Stick around and we'll get right to it.
Hey, welcome back, guys. Jason, KM4ACK. Over the last year, maybe year and a half, these UV-Pro and their sister radio, the VGC, have flooded the market. And for a lot of guys, this is their first radio that's APRS capable. And I keep seeing some of the same mistakes made over and over and over again. In fact, one of them in particular bit me multiple times before I finally got it figured out. So today we're going to go over some of the best practices as far as settings are concerned, primarily for APRS, but even if you're not really into APRS, a few of these settings may help you as well. So we're going to be using the app today so you can follow along really easy. However, keep in mind that as firmware updates come out and app updates come out, some of the things may move around a little bit in the application. But hopefully this is going to be a good guide for you to make sure you can get your radio set up correctly. So the first thing you want to do is add an APRS frequency in a memory slot. To do that, we're going to touch on the hamburger menu up in the top left corner, and that will populate this screen. If by chance you see this instead, just click that up arrow to the right of UV-Pro up there, and that will take you back to this screen. Now we can simply click and hold on channel 30 or whatever channel you want to put the APRS frequency in. And by the way, if you're using multiple memory banks or groups as it's called on this radio, you'll need to do this for each of the groups that you're using. So we'll go ahead and click on that edit channel. We'll just give it APRS for the frequency, and in the US that's going to be 144,390. And we'll just say OK. Now, here's another thing you want to do for this particular frequency. If you don't do this, you're going to hear the beeps and boops of APRS regardless of what other setting you key into the radio. There's also a digital mute setting, but it does not work the same way this does. And that is just click that mute right there on the screen, and you won't have to worry about hearing any of that APRS traffic. When you're done, just go ahead and click Save. Now, the next thing we need to do is make sure the iGate is off. And guys, you really do not ever want to be running an iGate on an HT unless it's in a very specific application. Typically, you've got an antenna connected to the HT that you can get up in the air 25, 30 feet or something like that. If you've got the antenna attached directly to the radio itself, you probably don't want to be running an iGate. Now, I know a lot of you will think, well, I don't have an APRS digipeater in my area, and that allows me to show up on the map. Well, you're really not doing anybody any favors. If you're not showing up on the map because you don't have APRS digipeaters and iGates in your area, then I would encourage you to build your own APRS digipeater iGate and put it up in your area. That helps both you and the other amateurs in your community. To turn that iGate off, we're going to click the three dots up in the top right corner. We're going to go over to the global settings. Let's go ahead and move into APRS settings, and then we want to make sure that that iGate service is turned off, and the one below that, share location via iGate, is also turned off. There's a note here that when the gateway is enabled, we will send your location to the server when you're logged in, even if location sharing is not turned on. So another reason I don't like to have that iGate enabled is because I don't necessarily want that sent directly to the internet. If it's going out over RF and gets gated, that's okay. But I want to know that it went out over RF and I was getting heard. A lot of times that can give you a false sense of security or a false alert that you're actually making it into an iGate when it's actually just your phone reporting that data. All right, now that we got that sorted out, let's go into the three dots at the top. Let's go to device settings, and let's go to signaling settings. Now, this setting right here at the top is the one that bit me, and I'll explain to you what it is here in just a second, but in 99.9% of the cases, you want that option turned off. What that is a setting in there that says every time I connect the phone, I want you to override anything that was done on the radio. So if that setting is turned on and I use the front of the radio and program in something new or change a setting, as soon as it connects to the app, it overwrites what I did on the front of the radio. So it's basically a one-way sync. By turning that off, it's a two-way street. So if you make a setting change in the app, it's going to sync to the radio. And the same is true if you make a setting change in the radio, it's going to sync to the app. Now, the only time I can think of that you might not want that particular setting turned off is maybe you bought a second radio and you wanted to send all of those same radios direct to that new radio from your old one. Maybe that would be a use case for turning that on, but these radios actually offer a way to send that information over RF so you can change all or send all of your channels over RF instead. But maybe that's a use case. Like I said, the vast majority of the time, we definitely do not want that on, because I can't tell you how many times I've changed a setting on a radio for somebody, trying to get them configured for something specific, and then as soon as they connect to the app, that setting is turned on, and then they lose all of the settings that are setting changes that I made for them. Now, under user information where it says identification information, I have that completely blank right there. Underneath that, the ID signaling, you want to turn all three of those off. And let me show you guys exactly why you want those turned off. All right, so in the app, I'm going to go ahead just for this demonstration and turn on identification information. We're going to turn on location, and we're going to turn on allow position check. Now, I'm going to key one of those radios, and I want you to listen to what happens on this radio. I'm going to key the UV-Pro, and I want you to listen to what happens here. Hear that little digital burst at the end? Well, that's happening every time I release the PTT key. Now, if you're using multiple UV-Pros, that might be okay, and you might be able to share some information across your group. But the vast majority of the time, you're working with a lot of different radios in your group. So maybe it's an FT5, maybe it's a Kenwood D75, and then some of the guys have UV-Pros. Well, in that case, it's just kind of annoying for everybody else that's not running the UV-Pro. So definitely turn that information or those three sliders off. Now, underneath the data mode, that is your APRS settings. Right there where it says channel, we never want it to be on the current channel. And the reason is if you swap away from the APRS frequency and say you move over to 5.2 simplex or a local repeater, well, you're going to be putting out APRS packets over that channel that you've got selected. This is why we specifically assigned 144.390 to a specific memory channel. So we're going to go into that, and we're going to tell it channel 30, which is where I put mine. Now, regardless of what you set on the front of the radio, it's always going to send out APRS over that one specific frequency. And we've got that channel muted, so we can't hear any of the APRS packets that are coming from other operators. Now, depending on how you want to share your APRS data, you've got two choices here: automatically share location and smart beacon. Automatically share location, we can set that for a specific time interval, which sometimes that's appropriate. More times than not, turning on smart beaconing will take care of everything we need. The way smart beaconing works, the faster we're traveling, the more often it's going to beacon out. And the slower we're traveling, the less often it's going to be beacon out. So the vast majority of the time, I prefer to use smart beaconing and let the radio adjust to my speed of travel. The next option down, the send power voltage, will cause the radio to include its current battery level in the APRS packet that it sends out, and that information can be viewed either on another APRS radio or on APRS.FI. You can turn that on or off as you wish. I typically leave mine set to off. Now, the next thing below that is the message, and this is the comment that goes out with your APRS packets. Typically speaking, I'm going to put AP mail and WinLink in my message. The purpose for that is if anybody else is using the AP mail service, the mail service, by putting AP mail in the comment, if someone left me a message using the mail service, then I don't have to manually check that. Because I've got AP Mail in the comment, as soon as my first packet, position packet is heard by an iGate, it's going to send me the message that was stored for me direct to my phone as an APRS message. And then I've got WinLink in there because, again, as soon as that position packet is heard by an iGate, it's going to send me an APRS message alerting me if I have any pending WinLink messages. So those two things you will almost always see in my APRS comment. Right below that, the format, we've got two choices, APRS and BSS. I think BSS is some Chinese form of APRS. I'm not exactly sure, so I could be entirely wrong on that. All I know is we want it set to APRS. Now, coming below that, we never want to put a check mark by the send on PTT release. That goes back to every time you release the PTT button, it's going to send out that packet. We don't want that to happen. We'll just let the smart beacon or the auto beacon take care of that for us. Mike E, I've never found a real good use case for Mike E, but if you want to use it, you can go ahead and enable that, and then pick your Mike E message type right below that. Now that's in addition to the message that you programmed in up above. Below that, you can choose whatever icon you want to use to represent your radio on the map and on other radios. Typically, I just use the walking man figure right there and call it good. Now, call sign. This is something else that we need to make sure we get entered correctly. So you will see my call sign there, and that's easy enough. Everybody gets that. What not everybody gets is the SSID that's out there to the right of that. In my case, it's 7. We've basically are going to use one of 3 types of SSID indicators. We will use 5 if you're just using a phone not attached to any radio. That lets everybody know that you're using your phone and you may or may not be putting anything out over RF. If we use 7, that lets everyone else know that we're on an HT, and the other most common one that we should be using is -9, which is for mobile radio, so those that are permanently fixed to your car. And then the final setting down there is the BSS APRS digipeater. Guys, there is very, very limited number of times that we want to use an HT as a digipeater, so the vast majority of the time you should set both of those to 0. Now, it's not a you never want to do it, it's just you seldom want to use it. For instance, at the parade that we just did, I absolutely used an HT that was up on a 4-story parking deck. And then we had an antenna up in the air about 15 feet above it. So in that particular case, we were using that digipeater to fill in. Mind you, it was not an iGate. It was only a fill-in digi. But we were using that digipeater to fill in the downtown area while we were operating the parade. So occasionally being able to use an HT as a digipeater is handy, but the vast majority of the time, you shouldn't be doing that, especially if all you've got's just a antenna on top of the HT and you're carrying around on your belt and you're walking around with it. You absolutely should not be using that as a digipeater. And I just realized that I skipped right over the APRS path that I've got set to wide 11, wide 21. Typically speaking, that is the setting that you want to use for your path. That will give you 2 hops when you go out. So basically that sends you through 2 digipeaters if you're using that path. Seldom do we need to get out further than that. Now, if you're out west and there is a very limited APRS coverage, you might want to go wide 11, wide 22. But for the vast majority of us, wide 11, 21 is going to be sufficient to get you out and let everybody know exactly where you're located. Now, let's cover a couple of bonus items that one of them pertains to APRS, and the other one is just kind of a cool trick you can do with the UV-Pro radios. So let's go up to the 3 dots again, and let's come back to global settings. And let's go into offline maps. When you get here, you can pick whichever type of map you want to use. In this case, I'll just use the terrain. We can hit the plus button in the top right corner, and then we can zoom in or out to include as much map area as we want to get this downloaded. Now, you'll notice up in that top right corner where it says highest 18, I typically will set that to about 15. I find that that is good enough to give me a detail level that I need without adding too much storage space to my phone. Now, honestly, instead of using this particular app for APRS, I would either recommend APRS Droid if you're on an Android system or Pocket Packet if you're on iOS. I think either of those offers a much better user interface on the phone than this particular app does. But if you do want to download those maps, you can do so right here inside the app. And then to show you one of the last cool little tricks you can do with this radio, let's come back up to the three dots. Let's come to Device Settings. Let's come to General Settings. And we're going to scroll right down here to where it says Audio Relay. An audio relay is a simplex repeater. So let me show you guys exactly how this works. It is going to give me a message here, making sure that I want to enable that. I am going to go ahead and click Enable. Now let's see if I can turn up the volume on that radio, and we'll make a quick transmission into the D75 to show you guys how this works. KM4 ACK testing. So all it does is it captures the audio that's being sent to it, and then it replays that over the air on the same frequency that you're using. So kind of a cool little parlor trick that you can do with the UV-Pro radio. If you found today's information helpful, be sure to give us a thumbs up before you head off. We will see you guys on the next one. Until then, 7-3.